the city of St. Louis, you're listening to the Don't Push Pause podcast with your hosts, Justin Johnson and Lindsay Reber.
Welcome to the podcast. So we did two pretty serious movies in a row. Kids, The Ice Storm. So we were feeling like we needed some. Yeah, we need something to bring us out of that. And I think this is a good choice.
Yeah, we're bringing you out of New Haven, Connecticut, and taking you to the South, Alabama, for good old My Cousin Vinny.
This is, I think, one of the few films we've done where I think that this is a relatively well-known movie.
Yeah.
It did good at the box office and also was a success. Mm-hmm. But I think that it's one that it's not one that's revisited a bunch. I don't really hear it come up on lists of like the 100 greatest comedies or that kind of stuff. So it's... and it's really funny. I mean, it's not all out.
It's not a knee slapper.
We'll get into that. You know, it's but it falls into the comedy.
It's one that shouldn't be forgotten.
Genre. Yeah.
And I feel like the title of it, if you've seen it, you definitely remember it by the title. It could be something that maybe you just never visited at any point in life. But if not, now's your chance.
Yeah, it's a fun one.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about a couple things here with My Cousin Vinny. We'll talk about the controversy with Marisa Tomei's Oscar win.
Everybody loves a controversy.
We'll talk about sort of like we said, it's not an all-out comedy, but I think why this works. I have some examples of another film by the same director that I'll do some compare and contrast. We also wanted to talk about the cast. I guess Marisa Tomei again, Joe Pesci a little bit, and Fred Gwynne. I love Fred Gwynne.
This is how many movies have we talked about out now with Fred Gwynne?
It's like our third Fred Gwynne movie.
I think it might be the fourth.
Okay.
I think it's fourth. So Pet Sematary, The Boy Who Could Fly.
Yeah, I did Ironweed for pick of the week.
Ironweed.
Yeah, so we got four
movies.
And
now My Cousin Vinny.
Well, Fred Gwynne, we love you.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Herman Munster.
Yeah.
We'll also talk about how the attorneys of the world, or at least of the American Bar Association, which would be all attorneys because they have to be part of the American Bar Association, really appreciate this movie.
And director Jonathan Lynn was an attorney. Not a practicing attorney, but he did go to law school.
So it adds a whole other depth.
This is we'll talk about that, has a very honest portrayal, genuine portrayal of how law works, a judicial system, how that works. And we'll do our picks of the week. My pick of the week is...
Can't wait.
Clue.
Love it.
The movie, directed by Jonathan Lynn, his first American film. And this was one... I was struggling with the pick of the week because I had a couple movies I watched that I was going to do, and then I didn't like them because I hadn't seen them in a while. And so I was hoping that wasn't going to be the case with Clue because I watched it a ton when I was a kid. But this is one of those... It was a really rad and fun movie.
We'd come to blows if you were like,
really?
You know what, Clue's bad.
Yeah.
I couldn't love that movie too much.
Okay, I'm glad I didn't dislike it. I didn't know it would have been a thing of contention, but we'd have one of our big fights again on the podcast.
Yet again, another fight.
Yeah. Well, I did enjoy it, Lindsay.
Good. I'm glad, and I can't wait to hear about it, Justin.
I'm going to spice it up more. I really loved it.
My pick of the week this time around is Slums of Beverly Hills, which stars Natasha Lyonne and Marisa Tomei, connected to My Cousin Vinny.
I love Natasha Lyonne.
Yeah, this was her I mean, it wasn't her first movie, but it was definitely one that brought her to the mainstream.
Yeah. She's one of the few people that can just like do the thing that she does, which is like this one specific kind of tone thing, and I just never get sick of it. It's just
but at the same time too, it's not like she's not just a one Like she isn't just like being herself when acting.
Yeah, I don't mean
But,
that, but she has range, but it's all in like she has a particular persona kind of that she's honed in on throughout the years, and like doesn't stray too far from that, but like it's such a, and there's a reason why, because it's like she's perfected it. It's like her own. Even
when she was in like American Pie, she's still being Natasha Lyonne, and it's you're in American Pie though, but somehow she's still great.
Well, I'm excited for that pick. I haven't seen that movie in a while, so I'll probably watch that one sometime this week.
Oh yeah, it's fun to revisit.
It's been a while. So we'll do our pick of the week, and then as always, close it out with the Murray moment.
Sounds good.
So before we get into My Cousin Vinny, Lindsay, can you tell us what's My Cousin Vinny about? From the title, it kind of gives a
I would be happy to. So My Cousin Vinny is about two boys who are wrongly accused of a murder on a road trip that they're on, and they call upon the only attorney that they can afford, that being one of the main characters' cousins. Who would have guessed it? Their cousin Vinny. So Vincent Gambino is coming down from Jersey and shaking things up in Alabama, and he learns a lot about being an attorney, and
he learns a lot about grits.
And is aided by his fiance in trying to get these guys acquitted of murder.
There's a lot going on.
Yeah,
a lot of things at stake in this movie.
Yeah,
but it's entertaining. This movie's
there's a lot happening in the story, but it's really just you were following the Joe Pesci character.
Yeah.
Through him trying to figure out the legal system.
Yeah. Well, I'll go to a clip of when they first arrive. Joe Pesci and Marisa Tomei arrive in Alabama at the courthouse.
Do they got Chinese food?
It's probably
that was a terrible one.
Yeah. You can do better. You want to go again?
Yeah.
All right. We'll go to a clip of them pulling up in Alabama, and then we'll talk about this movie, My Cousin Vinny.
I bet the Chinese food is terrible.
What?
Nothing. You stick out like a sore thumb around here.
Me? What about you?
I fit in better than you. At least I'm wearing cowboy boots.
Oh, yeah, you blend. I bet the Chinese food here is terrible.
I don't see anything out of whack under there.
It feels like the wheels went out of balance right after we hit that mud.
Nah, that's not it.
I think you should put it on a rack and take a look.
What's wrong?
What?
What's the problem?
Nothing. Car was shimmying on the highway a little bit.
Yeah, you got mud in your tires.
I got mud in my tires?
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you a question. How do you get mud into the tires?
Oh, no, you see, that's just a figure of speech. See, the mud gets around the inside of the wheel, throws the balance off.
You ever hear that? Mud in the tires?
No.
She never heard it. She knows everything about cars.
Now, see, down here, everybody gets stuck in the mud every now and then. Yep, yeah, we're famous for our mud.
Famous for your mud? How's your Chinese food?
You just keep on asking about Chinese food. Can't you tell they don't have Chinese restaurants around here? Gotta let everybody know you're a tourist. Come on.
It might be called My Cousin Vinny, but Marisa Tomei is what I think of when I think of this movie.
I think a lot of it is she elevates the movie.
Yeah.
I guess the first thing to talk about is this isn't a straight out comedy. There's definitely the crime and the elements of the judicial process are a big driver of the story and script. Though it is a comedy, but it's not an all out comedy. And I think
we are talking about a murder here.
Yeah. But though it does play on some small town stereotypes, I think that it's not lowbrow humor. There's some smart comedy going on.
So the use of stereotypes, I feel like, is necessary in this movie. It definitely plays on that from the outset, like what we just heard, two Jersey folks.
This fish out of water portrayal story.
Stepping into a place that they are unfamiliar with completely. Now, I don't think any of it is intended to be or comes across as insulting. It's just something that helps perpetuate the story.
Yeah. Even though Joe Pesci plays like the title role of Vinny, the movie is not necessarily on his shoulders.
It's very true.
And I think Joe Pesci is a comedic he's a comedic actor and he does it well. But I think of this movie as an ensemble piece. And I like to compare and contrast. I don't really like to knock movies on this podcast, but I was going to do Distinguished Gentleman for my pick of the week with Eddie Murphy. Not only was it directed by Jonathan Lynn, but they came out the same year that he released My Cousin Vinny. So he had 2 movies come out that year, which is highly unusual.
Are they similar?
They're very similar. So we have the Fish Out of Water story. We have a portrayal of like the judicial system is accurately portrayed in My Cousin Vinny. The political system is accurately portrayed in Distinguished Gentleman. It's a Fish Out of Water story because Eddie Murphy's sort of streetwise con man that gets put into the world of real life politics, and Joe Pesci's kind of sort of conning his way into pretending what he's doing. But where these 2 movies split, and I think when I think of a comedy and like I think of the whole movie resting on someone's shoulders, the reason why I bring up Distinguished Gentleman is because I feel like the first 30 minutes of that movie, when Eddie Murphy's doing Eddie Murphy, it's funny, but the rest of the cast doesn't offer much, and the script doesn't offer much for entertainment. It's kind of your run-of-the-mill story. But once we get locked into that story, Eddie Murphy's character has to have like a change of heart, so he has to switch tones. And so the rest of the movie, they try to add humor, but the ensemble cast isn't really helping. And Eddie Murphy tries to do his Eddie Murphy stuff. And I think when he does it well in the first 30 minutes. It's like the Eddie Murphy that you know and love.
Like Eddie Murphy's going to be good in anything.
But with My Cousin Vinny, I think you constantly have this smart entertainment going on in this ensemble cast. Everybody, no matter how small a role they have, has a place and purpose, and it's suits the movie. It carries the story. And the reason, again, Distinguished Gentleman to me is like where an example of a comedy where it's the whole movie is set on the shoulders of the comic, and Distinguished Gentleman's like 2 hours long and it gets too serious to me, whereas like My Cousin Vinny gets serious, but we still have an entertaining story at play. We still have a functioning, working, smart script, and they don't put everything on Joe Pesci's shoulders. It's like a Joe Pesci movie, but he has like a lot of people holding up the movie and keeping the story going and driving it. And I think that's why this movie to me is like really strong and really funny and holds up, and Distinguished Gentleman was a comedy that sort of floundered. Yeah, they just had so many similarities. That's why I had to
would have never
bring it up.
Yeah.
And same director, same year. It's just a lot. It's crazy that
I would have never thought to compare those, but yeah, I can see that. One thing with all of the supporting characters in this is, like you were saying, the comedy is kind of spread evenly throughout the movie.
Yeah.
And I feel like even the tiniest bit role, somehow that character's introduced, and then later on down the line, you realize why they were introduced, or somehow they come back into play for the story, which gives it a very complete feel as a comedy.
Yeah, and I think that it's a movie that knows when to not overuse a joke.
Yeah.
And because I think that happens a lot when you have a movie and they introduce a joke, and it's always like we do it 3 times. That's like the thing in
it's the SNL rule.
Yeah. Well, SNL I think was like they break their rule constantly. And when they do, that's where it goes south. And this one I think knows when to stop. Like the guy that with the $200, like the second time it's funny, and the third time they cut it off. It's real short, and he just jumps on the guy.
You're talking about when Marisa Tomei's character tries to hustle a guy for $200 over a pool game.
And he doesn't pay her back.
Yeah.
And so we're introduced to that scenario, and then it comes up again because Joe Pesci's like saying, well, when you get to $200, then we'll fight. He's going to fight him for it.
Yeah.
And the third time, the guy's
I got you $200 here.
But I love the humor, the timing, and to me, comedies, it's all about timing, and like it's perfect. He's like, I got the $200, but we're so deep into the story of Vinny, and he's like, I don't have time for this, and he just jumps on, like tackles him and knocks him out and grabs the $200
and just walks off.
And to me, it's great, and it's a joke that's not overused. And the thing with the grits, like grits plays a big part in this movie. I won't spoil it if you haven't seen it, but you know, he's introduced to what a grit is, and it's like, it's a very playful and funny scene.
You never heard of grits?
Sure, I heard of grits. I just actually never seen a grit before. Yeah, honey, you can try it.
You first.
What is a grit, anyways?
It's made out of corn. Them hominy grits.
Hominy. How do you cook it?
Well, you simmer it in water for 15 or 20 minutes. Put it on the plate and add butter.
So, you gonna eat it or not?
Grits play a strong role in the case, but things are introduced and they're not thrown away. Like things are introduced and they're smartly used again in the script. And that's I think classic, great storytelling and script writing.
Yeah.
And this, I feel this movie has like such a tight script especially for a comedy. This movie is what, an hour and I want to say it's like 150, hour 50.
It's close to 2 hours.
It's a pretty long movie for a comedy, in my opinion, but I don't get bored by it. And even when they're winding down, like things are coming together, it doesn't wear out its welcome. I think it's just perfectly paced and enough story, it's all around. It's a really well made and excellently entertaining film.
There's one recurring joke that happens up until the very end, and that being that Joe Pesci's trying to skirt around the judge of this case, finding out that he's like not he doesn't have a lot of credentials behind him. He has a law degree, but he doesn't have a lot to back him up, and so he's been kind of doing these little lies to get around.
Because they're like, what cases have you tried? So he's just like making up.
Yeah, he's just making up stuff. And this is another instance where this joke is carried out. Yeah. But it's sprinkled in up until the very ending. And with this joke in particular, we get to that and we're like, oh my God, he's going to find out. Oh my God. And in one instance, it's dealt with. But it doesn't ever feel tired. If anything, you're like, what's going to happen with that? Is he going to find? Is the judge going to find out or what?
And they don't leave anything. Again, they come back to stuff in a purposeful way.
Yeah.
It's not just there for humor and then thrown out. And that is one of my favorite bits is the joke that's used when he's like, the son of Sam. He's like the guy that his dog told him to kill people. The judge is like, you represent him. He's like, no, but I represent the first guy that they caught.
Which is perfect because what are you gonna?
It's like no one's gonna research
that.
Yeah,
no.
Yeah. So there's a lot going on in the scene where when we're first introduced to the guy that wants to fight him for the $200.
Sure.
They're in the middle of this very heated argument, and Joe Pesci's like all worked up, and then he like he just looks to his left a little bit, and it cuts to a guy who's like got like a neck brace on. He's like, "Did you injure yourself at your home or were you at work?" And he's like, I was at home, and Joe Pesci's like, damn. And it cuts back. They go back into the heated argument discussion that they're having. It's just really good timing. And Joe Pesci, I think is even in Goodfellas, like I think his comic timing, he's really good at being like menacing, but like humorous at the same time, which I think is something that's, that's a thing that's like his, like, I don't see that. I guess I see in some movies, but he really does that well, and it's such a fine line to walk to where you're intimidating, but like you can be funny.
I think with Joe Pesci, I mean, aside from like what I could think of, like Home Alone or the Lethal Weapon movies or something, with Goodfellas and like My Cousin Vinny, there are instances where he's so straightforward and so like matter of fact. And then in My Cousin Vinny can like switch to like a funny moment just on a dime. Yeah. And what I think of immediately with that in My Cousin Vinny is the judge is having an issue with how he's behaving. He doesn't like his behavior during court, and the judge is like, "Are you on drugs?" And he's like, "Drugs? No, sir, I don't do drugs."
Yeah.
It's just like taking it seriously, but not taking in the fact that he's totally talking down to him.
We'll go to another clip here. We want to talk about the cast in this and Marisa Tomei.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of what, like we said, Marisa Tomei is fantastic in this. I think like she's the highlight of this film, but I think their chemistry, her and Joe Pesci's chemistry, is incredible. And I think that plays a huge part in like any movie, but especially a comedy, because you've got to bounce things off of. And I've seen a lot of comedies where they're just the two leads, they're either trying to out funny each other. They just, the chemistry is just kind of dead. It's just not there. And this one, I feel like the chemistry is like
evenly
really
matched.
Huge. Like right when they pull up, you're like, pow, these two characters like are even with each other. And I think that all the scenes they have together, especially when they're alone in the hotel, are some of what makes this movie, it elevates it. And Marisa Tomei, I think, is a big part of that. So we'll go to a clip of Joe Pesci and Marisa Tomei, and then we'll come back, talk about her performance in the film in more depth.
If you will look in the manual, you will see that this particular model faucet requires a range of 10 to 16 foot-pounds of torque. I routinely twist maximum allowable torquage.
Well, how could you be sure you used 16 foot-pounds of torque?
Because I used a Craftsman Model 1019 Laboratory Edition Signature Series torque wrench, the kind used by Caltech high-energy physicists and NASA engineers.
Well, in that case, how could you be sure that's accurate?
Because a split second before the torque wrench was applied to the faucet handle, it had been calibrated by top members of the state and federal Department of Weights and Measures to be dead on balls accurate. Here's a certificate of validation.
Dead on balls accurate?
It's an industry term.
So Marisa Tomei, powerhouse performance.
Marisa Tomei, I've never disliked her in anything. I think she's extremely talented, and no matter what the role, embodies it very well. I always reference this movie somehow. I'm going to bring it back to What Women Want. I'm not saying that like What Women Want is an amazing movie or an amazing example of anything. Even in a movie like that, Marisa Tomei, who has a bit role in it, has this character arc, and she is not part of the main story. It's very much a small subplot, but her character arc and how she develops it, it's like you pick this A-list actor, in my opinion, for this screen time of maybe like 15, 17 minutes, and she delivers. It's one of those movies that's on TBS that I can't help but watch whenever it's on. The same thing with Monster-in-Law. I should really stop talking now. So even in the smallest role, Marisa Tomei can completely deliver. In My Cousin Vinny, I feel like she completely deserved the Oscar that she won for this role. She not only helps the story along, she kind of saves the day at the end. Her character saves the day at the end. But the way that she and Vinny, Joe Pesci, play off of each other, it is such an equal partnership, and they're both very strong-willed people with intense opinions, and the way that they come at each other is so evenly matched. They're both giving the same amount and taking out the same as well. And I feel that without her in this role, it might have been a completely different movie.
Yeah, I think if I feel like if like the my Cousin Vinny character rolled into town solo,
way
it would
different.
have just been like, because all the moments where he feels like where he shows vulnerability,
Mm-hmm.
it comes out because he feels comfortable around her, like when they're in the hotel room, I think like
Yeah.
we see the side of Vinny where, you know, he's taking this seriously and he's not just showboating here. Like he has to put on a show for everybody else because he's trying to fake it till he makes it. But when he's with her, we see that he does care about getting his cousin off. He's care about
very capable,
winning the case. He's worried, like he doesn't want to let anybody down, but he realizes that he's got himself into.
He's muffing up a lot.
Yeah, he's got himself in uncharted waters.
Yeah, and her role in this is to kind of push him along, and at the same time giving him encouragement, also being like, "What's the matter with you? You know, shape up. What are you doing in there?"
And I do love in the end that she challenges him all the way to the very end where he says, because she wants to get married, that's her thing, and he's like, so now I won this, you know, case. You want to marry me? And she's like, no, I don't want to marry you because you can't win a case on your own. And it's, you know, even at the end, she's like, I love that she challenges him, that she makes him the better person because he needs someone that believes in him, but it's also gonna like call him out.
Yeah, I don't want to say it's like a play fight dynamic that they have, but it is this just kind of cute, sassy rapport that they have with each other.
It's a good it's great chemistry, and I'm curious about the
how they got along on set.
Yeah, just like how.
I'd be curious. Yeah,
I'd be curious, like how the.
There's also like a 20-year age difference, 20+ year age difference.
Yeah,
too.
which Marisa Tomei surprisingly looks older in this film, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but just they have her.
She was like 27, I think.
Yeah, 27, 20, and they make her look. I think that they're purposely trying to make her look older and Joe Pesci look younger. Like his hair's seems like it's dyed black for the movie.
It does. It looks like it's
because he looks younger than this than he did in Goodfellas. This came out a year or so later. And also as far as like we'll get a little more to that. We'll wrap it up on cast. Like I think Fred Gwynne and Ralph Macchio really round out. They put in very solid support performances. But I wanted to get into the Marisa Tomei controversy. Oscar controversy, which we don't. This isn't something that
we'll hit on a controversy.
It's not something. This isn't like a what's the channel that does all the
TMZ.
Yeah, TMZ. This isn't like a TMZ.
It's not like we're talking about Richard Gere and the Gerbil or something.
Right, but this was like So this controversy was like a pretty huge deal because this was pre-internet. This was sort of I think that this was something that would have like been addressed immediately if it would have happened now, because of the age of communication and people can get on social media and discuss things.
Yeah.
But when Marisa Tomei won the Oscar, the controversy being that she did not actually win, like the Jack Palance, who was the presenter, was very old, and I don't think he looked confused or anything, but because she
Never
was,
thought that either.
but the reason being was that the controversy and the sort of rumor that spread was that she was a dark horse for the Oscars. My Cousin Vinny wasn't nominated for any other Oscars other than her. She was the only American actress. It was mainly, she was up against foreign actresses and very what people would consider like Oscar bait type films.
Yeah.
So when she won, people thought that Jack Palance like screwed up, and because hers was the last name that he announced as the people who are nominated, they thought that he just said her name because he couldn't read the card or he was reading off the teleprompter. But the thing about it is this was pre-internet, pre-social media, so this got talked about in other magazines and newspapers. They didn't believe that she didn't win, but the controversy was being talked about so much in Hollywood that it grew and it kind of became like an urban legend almost, like, but people bought into it. And so like all
because of
all
people
of these
making up stuff.
Yeah,
it's
and
ridiculous.
so, but then I remember, I mean, I was pretty young, but I remember thinking like, oh, like, so did she win? Did she not win? And you can, I mean, it's so much, the controversy was so big, like you can go to snoops.com and they explain like, the way the Oscars run and that it won her 100%, like she won the Oscar, like there wasn't a mess up on the Academy. Though one of the reasons why I want to bring up the controversy is because the Academy did make a mistake with Moonlight and La La Land.
But that was also rectified almost immediately.
Immediately, yeah. So I feel bad for Marisa Tomei because this was a huge breakout hit for her and she won an Oscar, and then she had to live with this, like for a year, people saying like, well, you didn't actually win.
And I'm sure that probably her peers and like professional colleagues did not feel that way. I mean, I don't know.
It steals your thunder. And everyone else got to give their speech and feel good about it. And like, there was all
There's
these
this cloud over it.
And it wasn't just tabloids writing. It was these were like legitimate magazines and newspapers, like printing this saying, we believe she won the Oscar, but it was such a huge controversy that they had to print it. They were like, this is juicy. This is like, so it became almost like real. It like became.
We're going to bring you this fake story where nothing happened, but we're telling you.
Now we know all news is fake, but this was back when you could trust all news sources and everything that you read was real.
All fake news basically started with Marisa Tomei. I mean, is what we're saying.
She started fake news.
Yeah, going on record right now.
So, kind of a crazy controversy. I mean, that's pretty huge. I mean,
and that sucks for her career.
It does suck for her, but it's like such a. But I had to bring it up because it is such a significant story that is attached to this movie.
Yeah.
And her win. So
I'd love to know what her thoughts are on the matter.
But I will say that I think she deserved that Oscar. I think that
Hands
her
down.
performance in this is excellent. And I think that anybody in their right mind that would question it, like sit down and watch this movie. And I mean, you'll see that and I think because it's a comedy, and I think the Oscars, they don't appreciate comedy or horror. It's something that's not new, but they kind of frown upon it. And so it's like every now and then someone does a performance that's so good like hers that they have no choice. They're like, all right, we have to acknowledge this. This is just too good.
And it's true, really. So, she steals the show in this one.
So anyway, that's the controversy. If you want to hear more about it, you can look it up on the internets now. You don't have to wait to read about it. You can just Google it. So I want to talk a little bit about Jonathan Lynn,
the director.
He's had an accomplished career. I believe he had like a fairly popular television show before British director who started making Hollywood films in the early 80s, starting with Clue, which I'll talk about in the pick of the week. But I think this is one of his more, I guess like his most well-known movie. He did Whole Nine Yards. He did Sergeant Bilko with Steve Martin. He did Trial and Error.
Greedy.
He did Distinguished Gentleman, which I talked about earlier. Nuns on the Run. The Fighting Temptations.
Nuns on the Run.
Is that what it's called?
No, yeah, no. I'm just laughing about it because it's been a second since I've seen it, but
it looks pretty silly. I haven't seen it.
It's pretty silly.
I think I might have seen it, but
it's what's his face, Eric Idle.
Okay, all right. But yeah, very successful. I think he's a really strong director, and I think that he did have, like we said, a law degree, and so I think that I listened to an interview with him, and he really wanted to make sure that this was as close to like how like a trial would go down, like as real as possible.
Yeah.
And all the lingo that's used, the way that things are processed, the way that
expert witnesses are presented,
the way they're cross-examined. And I want to say that he also doesn't get dramatic with the trial. Like some of the music does, but like there's a couple of things, but like when I compare it to like other trial films that I've seen, because the trial does take up like a fairly decent portion of pretty much the whole like last act of the movie is the trial. I think that was a really smart and like bold decision to say, hey, instead of trying to make this super dramatic, let's like make this as real as possible. Because that's generally when you're thinking of Hollywood films, and especially like kind of big Hollywood films with name actors, embellishing is like he's the best attorney, they're the best doctor. It's like everything, you know, it's like he's the best 911 operator. You know, like they do these, you know, and they just they perform things, and like people who do the real jobs are like, yeah, that's pretty much like a 100% fabrication of like what it's really like.
Yeah.
So I thought that it was kind of unique to say like, hey, let's make this like as real as possible. Like, and so much so that, like you said,
and it is, but it's also very like succinct. So it's like it's gonna boil it down pretty quickly to where, you know, Vinny can cross-examine somebody in under 5 minutes, and if that were to happen in reality, it would be much longer than that.
Yeah.
But for comedic purposes and because it's a movie, these instances are sped along. But it doesn't mean that it's boiled down. Is not pretty much like how it would go down in court.
Yeah. And like you were saying, was it the Bar Association?
Yeah, the American Bar Association.
They rank it as the
like number 3.
Number 3 is the.
It's like the best portrayal, or like top movies that are as close to being authentic, like representing either lawyers or courtroom trial scenes.
And I swore I read somewhere that like this is shown in first-year law student classes. Some classes will show, or they recommend like viewing My Cousin Vinny as a representation of how to accurately go to trial.
You know, a little interesting side note about the court-appointed attorney in Vinny is that actor got, I think he did it as a favor to Jonathan Lynn, and he got pigeonholed, or not really pigeonholed, but he was thought of to have a stutter, and he stutters at a very important through an entire like cross-examination scene, and it's unbearable to watch. And it's been said that it was hard for him to get a role after that, because whether you're thought of as a stutterer or
so
just
prominent.
Yeah. So unfortunate for that guy.
It's an effective
hey, a year
device
later,
to use, you know.
A year later, he was in My Boyfriend's Back. Not to bring it back to that, but
bring it.
But he was.
Yeah.
He didn't stutter in that.
Well, yeah, I think there's a lot of genuine aspects of this. There's a lot of genuine emotions. It's a movie that's funny, but it's also moving. I think it's very charming. I really also think that Fred Gwynne and Joe Pesci have extremely great chemistry. I think that they play off each other really well. It seems like they're having like a really like a blast. Like it seems like it would have been a blast, like working, like playing off of each other.
I feel like it, because Fred Gwynne had been around. I think this was actually his last role before he passed away. He's such an accomplished actor, and to have he and Joe Pesci, who has such a natural style of humor, and Fred Gwynne, who can do comedy with his eyes closed and also be incredibly dramatic. They're just two great actors that are going at each other, and it's a lot of fun to watch.
When I think too, like he is like when Fred Gwynne's character says, I don't know how they do it in New Jersey or, you know, the East Coast, but like we play things by the book here. And like he immediately sets the tone, sets a scene of like, this is like the real deal. Like you're in a big times, like, and he does it in a way that's like fun and interesting and funny in it, but it sets up the story. It sets up the challenge for Joe Pesci's character. And it really, like, I believe him when he says it's like, yeah, you're not going to mess with this judge.
Yeah,
like he's like an authoritative figure.
I'm scared of Fred Gwynne when he lays down the law. And
that voice is perfect for Joe. It's like I don't know if he's played a judge in any other movies before this, but you would just like, he just has like a very, you know, because you think of a judge as like a very authoritative figure, and he has that presence down. Like I think
and his
of
stature
like
too. He
him,
like towers over Joe
It's like
Pesci.
him and James Earl Jones just have that presence with their voice and their like stature.
Just like, I immediately respect you and fear you.
Yeah. Just like you just want to just immediately answer with like, yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Well, let's so My Cousin Vinny, I enjoy. I'm really glad we picked this one, especially after coming out of a month of really serious films, which I love both. I'm glad that we took a serious turn with the podcast, but it is nice to go with something a little more lighthearted. And this to me is like I would call it like a lighthearted comedy.
It is. Yeah, good, even though we're dealing with murder, it's still lighthearted comedy.
Yeah.
It's going to be one that if you are stressed out or having a rough day, it's involved enough and intelligent of a story that you can get lost in the reality of this movie for a little while, which is always great when a movie can do that.
This is one I really, really encourage people to revisit. This is one
it's just fun.
I watched it twice in the last week or so, and both times I was just completely enthralled in it. So
it might be one of my favorite Joe Pesci roles. Yeah, honestly,
I'll always it would be third for me. And I love Casino and Goodfellas, and then this one would be, and I love Raging Bull too. Joe Pesci's good.
Yeah, he's great. He's a great actor.
Great. I mean, it's like you think that you're like, wait a minute, this guy's been like,
he's been kind of
most movies
forever.
He's done like been in pretty incredible roles. So
yeah.
All right, well let's so enough about My Cousin Vinny. We'll move on to our picks of the week.
Sounds good.
You picked
I did Slums of Beverly
Hills.
This
Can
time.
you tell us about Slums of Beverly Hills? And you picked it with the connection being again Marisa Tomei.
Marisa Tomei
is the lead actress in Slums of Beverly Hills.
I don't just love her because she's Italian. She really is a tremendous actress, I feel like. And sometimes there comes a movie that through its extreme frankness makes you feel or makes you relate, even if you haven't experienced those situations personally. And what I think makes Slums of Beverly Hills so special is that the writer-director Tamara Jenkins ripped this movie straight from her own life. So it's set in 1976 and follows a divorced dad of three kids, the Abramowitz family, as they skip from apartment to apartment, avoiding the landlord's ladies that the dad has shacked him up with in the bill. They keep to the Beverly Hills zip code, supposedly for the, quote, good schools, though this must be during the summer because we don't really ever see the kids going to school. The daughter, as we said, is Natasha Lyonne, best known for But I'm a Cheerleader, and as we've mentioned, Orange is the New Black. So she's the occasional narrator, but really the main character whose emotions we experience, and the most adult of everyone in the movie, even though she's a teenager. So seemingly overnight, she's gotten boobs and realizes how that truly affects a young girl's life. Everyone seems to notice, from her dad, her two brothers, the guy next door, and she hates her impending, blossoming sexual awakening and just wants it to be over already. She wants a breast reduction. She feels like a freak, and it isn't until her completely comfortable with herself cousin Rita, who's Marisa Tomei, cousin Rita visits or comes to live with them, although she has an eating disorder. She's recently out of rehab, aimless and secretly pregnant. It isn't until she enters the picture that Viv starts to feel special by just having another woman around. The entire character is almost too perfect for this. We've got Lyonne, Tomei, and Murray Abramowitz. The dad is Alan Arkin. But poor Murray, he's just trying to provide for his family, but his divorce, gambling history, and not being the best car salesman has really left them with no money, hence the sneaking out of apartments in the middle of the night to avoid the landlord. And this is a behavior that his family has become completely accustomed to, and they live out of suitcases, and it seems like a terrible life. But we get the idea that this wasn't how things had always been in their lives. It's just where the family had landed now. So Slums of Beverly Hills can be looked at as somewhat depressing, but really it's just a real representation of how families deal with abrupt change and how it can, in the case of the Abramowitzes, make them even more tight-knit and caring, even if they are kind of gruff during the whole process. There are so many highlights to this movie too, so many moments that make me laugh. The most memorable is Natasha Lyonne and Marisa Tomei dancing around a hotel room with a vibrator to the Parliament Funkadelics' Give Up the Funk. That one never gets old. Another one that sticks out for me is Vivian getting her period on some precious needlepoint upholstery of a woman that Murray's trying to court, and that woman is played by the one and only Lucille Bluth of Arrested Development, Jessica Walter. I really can't say enough about how great Slums of Beverly Hills is. No matter what your family history, if you've struggled, if you've gone through puberty, if you've ever cared so much for someone struggling just to get by, you can find something in this movie that makes you personally respond to it. And Natasha Lyonne, girl, when I was 17 and saw this movie for the first time, well, I guess I just want to say thank you, because it was pretty moving at the time. It still is. So check it out. It's truly a great movie, and it's one that shouldn't be lost in independent film history.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen Slums of Beverly Hills since it came out, but I saw it in the theaters when it came out. I was real into the mid to late 90s indie film boom.
It was a boom.
And I do remember there being a scene where they speak their own language.
That is so
like,
impressive.
I mean, and I remember that being like, how did they, it's like, seems very tough to memorize. Like,
they did it though.
And it's real crazy.
Yeah, Leone and Tomei totally do this gibberish language, but it's obviously not that they're, I forget exactly what it's called, but they're not just like making sounds. Like, you can tell that it is a language.
Yeah, it has it seems it's a little bit like Pig Latin. Like, it has that same cadence or whatever, the way it's phrased, but it's their own thing that it was like, it's presented in the movie like, oh, do you remember when we used to do this? And they like fall into the scene really great. I remember that being like really impressed me.
It's super impressive.
I always love your picks of the week. It's 80% of the time.
Yeah.
You pick them, and I feel like it's always something I've seen. I'm like, how have I not seen this? Like so long. What's that?
But you've seen it though.
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah.
Yeah, I said that's a B-. That's not a bad average. 80% of the time.
I mean,
Well, your pick of the week this time around is, I love this one.
Yeah,
never gets old.
I feel like nervous about doing my pick of the week because you're like so versed in this movie, and I hope I can do it justice because I didn't know that you were as big a fan of this as you were.
It's just a great movie. A lot of people didn't care for it.
Well, you were. It seemed like a different story. You seem pretty.
I mean, do you want to fight again?
You seem pretty judgy about
whether
or not I like the movie. So.
We can fight. Vinny's already bringing out my Italian heritage, so if you want to fight,
I'll do my pick of the week and then we'll hash it out off.
I am wearing a gold chain necklace on top of a black shirt right now, so not to be with my shirt sleeves rolled up. So the Italian vibe is strong. Yeah. Currently, there's not any sort of doubt that you could not take me in a throwdown. So you're right.
I wouldn't.
My 5'4" against your 6'2", 6'4",
6'3", whatever.
Yeah, totally evenly matched. Yeah. You're right.
The movie Clue.
Yes.
Written and directed by Jonathan Lynn, one of his first American film, brought into the project via John Landis. Jonathan Lynn was just visiting America and was checking out Hollywood, and he was friends with John Landis, and John Landis said, hey, we're trying to make a movie about the Parker Brothers board game Clue. And Jonathan Lynn just like, yeah, that sounds pretty ridiculous, but John Landis was like, you should take a crack at it. Like, so he went back to his home, wrote a script for Clue, brought it back to Hollywood, and they loved it. I guess this movie had been in development for a while. There had been like 5 or 6 scripts written. So Clue was not a game that I played a lot when I was younger. Of all the Parker Brothers games, it was not. But it's like a whodunit mystery. It's like a murder mystery game, and there can be a lot of different ways the game can end, with who committed the crime, with what form of weapon, and there's different characters with different murder weapons. Like there's like a pipe, a rope, a gun, a dagger, a wrench, which just seems kind of menacing. It's like a blunt object. But I think the movie does a really good job of, the best way that you could handle a board game, bringing a board game to life. I think that this movie is like a really fun way of introducing all these characters that the board game created, and the possible scenarios of like who could possibly have done it. So Clue is much like My Cousin Vinny, but even more so an ensemble cast type movie. So Tim Curry plays the butler. They all the characters meet at this mansion. They've all been given a letter to meet this evening for dinner, and we come to find out that the main host, Mr. Body, has been blackmailing all these people. He ends up dead, and it becomes a mystery of like, how did Mr. Body get killed? And most of this is moderated, like the group is moderated through Tim Curry, who plays the butler. He brings everybody in, and everybody's introduced through his character and their name, and they have all been given names, like Miss Peacock, like the game, he's Wadsworth. Miss White, Professor Plum, like they've been given all these like names, so no one knows each other's real name, which kind of adds to the fun. And I thought it was a good way to incorporate the way the game Clue works. This is basically like your standard whodunit mystery. There is a lot of information, so it's one that when I first started watching it, it's one that helps to have a second viewing if you haven't seen it before, because there is a lot of information that's coming at you. Kind of rapid fire, really, to be honest. It's a rapid fire script. Toward the end of the film, there are 3 endings, and much like how the game Clue ends, there can be alternate endings. They wanted to do this with the film, and this was actually John Landis was the producer on the film and got Jonathan Lynn involved, and it was his idea that they shoot these multiple different endings. When you could see it on VHS and when it came to DVD, they play all 3 endings. Like you see them, all the alternate endings. You see the 2 possible endings, and then what really happened, what was the ending. But when this movie was released theatrically, they had I'll say the word gimmick, and it was each theater, depending on what screening you went to, you didn't know what ending you were going to see. And so, but they would say, the theater would say like, this is ending A, this is ending B, like this is ending C. So if you really loved the film, you could go to the different theaters, different screenings, and see the various alternate endings. Supposedly they shot a 4th ending, which Jonathan Lynn said was so terrible he like has no memory of the ending, but it was one where Wadsworth, Tim Curry's character, is like mastermind the whole thing and like committed all the crimes. But he said it was terrible. But huge ensemble cast. Tim Curry, like I said, plays Wadsworth. We've got Eileen Brennan, Madeline Kahn, Christopher Lloyd, Michael McKean, Martin Mull, Leslie Ann Warren, Colleen Camp, Lee Ving from the band Fear. And this is a film that I think really, we were actually having a discussion about cult films earlier today and our various definitions of what a cult film is. But to me, Clue has a lot of culty things. You know, we've got the John Landis attachment. A lot of these actors have been in like other culty type movies. But ultimately, I think it's a movie that people either say, yeah, I've never heard of it, or like, I love that movie. And they love it. Like, you know, you were saying, you told me a lot of people, you know, that like absolutely adore this film, and I can understand why. It's extremely fun. And back to the physical comedy, there's a scene where Tim Curry is explaining to the group, and it's very rare in a movie where you see like 8 to 10 people on screen all in the same shot. And Tim Curry's like explaining information, and he's running through the house, and they're following him, like chasing after him. And like, you know, you have like 8 people in the scene, up to 8 people in the scene, and they're like, he's like, and then we went over here, and then I went over here, and then this happened, and you know, and he's like, not to make a long, you know, he's like, to make a long story short, and they all in unison are like, too late, you know, they're like all like shouting in unison, and it's this very exhausting, hilarious, amazing performance from an ensemble cast where everybody has to play together, and I can't imagine the blocking that it must have taken to pull these shots off. I mean, it's really kind of amazing. It almost has like I think like these ending, like this movie could have functioned as like as a theatrical play, like, and it does. I think like it's very atmospheric. There's a lot of humor in this movie that it's just kind of silly, you know what I mean? Like he accidentally, there's like these 2 dogs that are like Doberman pinchers that are there's several dogs in it, but there's 2 German Shepherds in the beginning, and Tim Curry, the who plays a butler, like steps in dog poop and then like scrapes it off his shoe. But like the first 3 or 4 people that enter the house kind of like, they, like after he leaves, they like check their shoes, they like get a whiff of it. And it's silly. It's kind of like lowbrow, but there's like all these kind of little things that come into play. Even though John Landis, I don't think had, out of like a producer role or like, spearheading the project, though I don't think his involvement was huge, I do see a lot of his influences in the film, the comedy, and that very 80s, like sort of like, it's very dry a lot of the times. For Jonathan Lynn's first time doing a Hollywood movie, his first attempt, I think it was excellent. And also a movie that sadly was not successful at the box office. But it's a really well-made film, has a lot of atmosphere, a lot of that sort of rainy, it's lightning, thunder. It all takes place on a dark night, like stormy night in a mansion. Really great set pieces, and it's a really finely crafted, well-made film. It's a fun movie to revisit, go back and see all these people together on the screen. A lot of them comedic actors that allow each other their moment to breathe. I think that's something that a good comedian does, is they know when to tell the joke and when to let the other person tell a joke. And I think a lot of that is what happens in Clue. So if you haven't seen it, check it out. I'm going to watch it again very soon, because there's a tremendous amount of information.
There's a lot going on. All of the actors involved, I think, make that movie work. Like you said, the set's great, and it is set up very much like a play. But everyone involved in it adds so much to it, and they're all, I mean, Madeline Kahn, Michael McKean, like, they're all incredible.
And if there's a movie that will make you want to just watch a bunch of Tim Curry movies, this is it. I mean, he's fantastic.
Yeah, that guy, anything that he's in, he is legendary. For sure.
And he has such a distinct look. I mean, just everything, the way he says words. I mean, he's one of the few people where I'm just like, go to a close up. I want to like just see the way he's like saying words.
If there's anyone that can communicate emotion with his eyes, it's Tim Curry.
Yeah. And it never feels over the top. It's like just the right amount of, like, I don't like to use the word melodrama, but that's what's coming to mind.
Yeah.
But it is it's an intentionally dramatic look and tone, but somehow feel he's doing his own thing. He's just it's great. It's worth the movie just to see Tim Curry
We also can't forget that Christopher Lloyd's in this too.
Yeah, and Christopher Lloyd. Everybody in it's great.
Everybody in it's
like so great, and everybody in it gets their moment to shine.
There's a tiny little bit part I want to make sure gets mentioned too, is that Jane Wiedlin from the Go-Go's is the very, very small part and very short-lived, but she's the singing telegram girl that gets popped.
Okay. Yeah. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Well, so that's Clue the movie, and Slums of Beverly Hills, our picks of the week. So that brings us to one of my favorite moments at the podcast, and that is your Murray moment.
Chicks dig me because I rarely wear underwear, and when I do, it's usually something unusual.
I think I need a root canal. I'm sure I need a long, slow root canal.
You gonna come and shake my monkey tree again?
Oh, what does that old queen know? She didn't even show.
Hey, this is so scrumptious. Is this hand shucked?
The flowing robes, the grace, all striking.
That was fun.
All right, quiz time. What's a movie wherein our Billy Murray plays an attorney from the South? Anything come to mind? Well, Billy's well known for showing up in feature films where he's in a bit role or a cameo, and there's one in my mind where he absolutely shines, but I feel like he's often forgotten that he was ever in it.
Man, you got my mind, like my brain is like really searching right now.
I know you know it. All right, so what's the movie?
Do I get a second clue, or is this...
No.
That's it?
That's it. I mean, that's really... I'm just going to come out with it. It's
All
a
right.
little overly dramatic, neo-noir, sexy crime drama, maybe? Anything?
Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid?
No.
Dang it. I feel stupid that I don't know this now.
You know it. It's this little-known movie called Wild Things.
Oh, dang it.
I knew you knew it.
Yeah.
Okay, so now
I haven't seen Wild Things in a long time, but yeah, he has a pretty...
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bigger... I was, for some
It's
reason...
not like a
when
supporting
you said,
role.
Yeah, for some reason, like, my mind started searching for, like, I was thinking, like, a 2-minute cameo.
Not quite that small.
I blame you.
You're right. I misled you, but maybe that was intentional. I don't know. So for those of you out there, maybe now you remember Bill Murray being in this movie. Wild Things was a movie with so many twists and turns that even after it's over, you think that maybe there's something left that you don't know the full story. And like My Cousin Vinny, Billy's character, attorney Ken Bowden, plays the legal system. And neither Ken nor Vinny are crappy lawyers. They just know how to play the game and ultimately get to the truth, that being that their separate clients are actually innocent of their accused crimes. The tone of Wild Things, whether you laugh at ridiculous dialogue or over-the-top acting, is very much intended to be a serious movie. And it is. It's a damn fine movie, really, that borders on being too complicated and unbelievable, but that aside, what makes Bill Murray's role so perfect and ultimately a great moment in his career is that his character exists in a completely different tone than the rest of the movie. Ken is happy as a lark doing fraudulent insurance claims and sticking up for the little guy. He's a shyster of an attorney, but he gets the job done. In true Billy form, the way in which he moves through the Wild Things world is always with a sly, cunning sarcasm. Billy's style of humor is also very appropriate for an attorney, I think. It's kind of patronizing, a little logical, very logical and very rational. While the plot of the movie is twisted and dark, Billy injects such humor into the story that he actually makes you laugh when you're not supposed to be laughing or think something's funny. When Ken wins a multi-million-dollar lawsuit, he takes the settlement agreement and excitedly rubs it all over his body in front of his client. This is Billy. This is what you get when you hire Bill Murray for a role like this. He brings levity to an overly dramatic movie by injecting comedy when you're least expecting it. Now, I won't ruin anything about the movie for those of you who haven't seen Wild Things, or maybe you can't remember how the movie finally twists into the ending, but let's just say Billy's character is smarter than you might have thought. Now, at this time in his career, he had a string of movies like in the early to mid 90s that could have or should have done better at the box office, in my opinion, or maybe just didn't hit audiences the way that they were intended. The reason I wanted to bring up Wild Things is because this was the last big hurrah before Rushmore hit. And then all of a sudden, the entire rest of the world rediscovered Bill Murray through the eyes of Wes Anderson. And from this point on, his career took a completely different turn into a mature realm that I don't really know if anyone saw coming. So our Billy playing attorney Ken Bowden in Wild Things is this week's Murray moment. So go check out the film if you haven't seen it. I promise you it's one of the best things about the movie.
Definitely it's a sleazy movie. It's not controversial, but
It's super sleazy.
It's sleazy.
Even Bill Murray's sleazy.
It might be one of the sleaziest movies with like
pretty
big marquee
bag
names.
heavy.
For big marquee names.
Yeah.
And for the 90s. The 90s weren't really known for sleaze. It was like a little more glossy.
I just watched it again the other day and was like, yeah, this movie is not bad at all.
I'm going to check it out again. It's been a while. I probably watched it, I don't know. It's probably been like 10 years.
I wish I could remember what it was like to first watch it because I feel like everyone always says, the first time you watch Sixth Sense, like, you never saw it coming. And I feel like Wild Things is almost like there's so many twists that like I kind of forgot like how far it goes. And it's, if you haven't seen it, it's really fun just for that aspect. But it's a complete sleazeball movie. It's great.
So That's Your Murray moment. Wild Things, if you haven't seen it. Our picks of the week. Clue the movie. Slums of Beverly Hills. My Cousin Vinny.
So happy to talk about that one and make you remember it. There are countless things to talk about from this movie, and we hope that maybe this has inspired you to revisit this Marisa Tomei and Joe Pesci.
Yeah, hands down, it's fun, full of entertainment. I highly recommend it. What are we doing next podcast? What's coming up?
I think the next one that we're doing, hold on, what is today? Today is My Cousin Vinny.
Oh, we're getting into, it's Christmas. Our next podcast is on Christmas.
We've got a special holiday year-ending surprise for you.
Yeah. And it's our 20th episode.
And our 20th episode. Kind of a big deal.
I'm pretty...
Kind of a B-day.
Yeah, it's you know,
kind of a
us,
thing.
Yeah. But we've decided not to do a Christmas movie. This was like a bit of...
There are plenty of Christmas movies to do.
Felt too on the nose to do a Christmas movie on Christmas.
And not everyone, loves Christmas. One believes in Christmas.
Right.
Or like whatever. So what we're giving you a gift at the end of the year, which is...
We're doing a film from every religion. No, we're doing sequels that don't suck. That's right.
Sequels that don't suck. So we're still kind of mulling over our options here, and we're gonna give you little tidbits on everything. So we're gonna break the mold a little bit.
And yeah, we're doing multiple films, and this is I want to put it out there. I don't, because I feel like the sequels that don't suck is like, we're not being snooty. There's plenty of sequels that I think.
Yeah,
but
that's just being catchy.
Yeah, it's there's plenty of sequels that they kind of suck, but they're not, you can watch them. But I think what we're trying to do is hand select the best sequels that kind of came out of mostly the 80s.
Or maybe a sequel that you
90s.
Don't know about that
Right.
existed that you're like, hey, that one was actually really good.
Right. I think we've got some.
Yeah.
I think we've got some good ones.
Yeah.
There's one that we're doing that I think is better than the original.
Oh, I think I know which one.
No. Gremlins 2.
Okay. Well, spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
Gremlins 2
is going to be in the mix. I'm lobbying for Joe Dante.
Okay.
We're gonna have. I think we're doing like 4 or 5 movies. You're gonna see.
Yeah.
But
there's gonna
anyway,
be one I'm gonna press you to let me do, but I understand if you don't let me, it's fine.
You
can keep me
very
back in the
rarely
basement.
had to apply much pressure to break me to cater to your whims.
Let's just say it's got Natasha Lyonne, and I know you know what I'm talking about. Do not say anything.
I believe I do. I think I acquired that one for you.
You did.
In Peoria, Illinois, of all places.
I'm proud of it too.
But I think it's gonna be. We're excited. 20 episodes. It's on Christmas. You can follow us on Instagram. That's kind of where we do most of our information is Instagram. It's my favorite of all the social media outlets. We're on there. Don't Push Pause Podcast. Facebook is more of our informational launch when we do each episode.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to see what's coming up next, go to Don't Push Pause Podcast on Facebook. Pretty much everything that we've done, every episode we have available on our website. If you want to check out back episodes, kind of see what we're about, where we're coming from, there's a lot of information available on us personally. Don'tPushPausePodcast.com. And if you just want to send a message out, good, bad, ugly, we love it. We love to hear from people. Don'tPushPausePodcast@gmail.com. As much as we love to do this, it's knowing people are listening is what makes a lot of this worth it. And we hope that we are doing these films justice, giving you some good information, sparking discussions, sparking good topics. Again, thank you so much for listening. Until next time, I'm Justin Johnson.
And I'm Lindsay Reaper.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you.